All right, welcome back to Kitchen Bullshit with me. I'm going to try a little different thing today, and I'm going to read the latest post on my Substack that I wrote today. Trying to figure out if this is a useful experiment for me, so please bear with me. Try to make some content and not feel like it's useless or something. So this will be up in all the places with the article. So today's Tong Shu indicates the hexagrams for today, Tuesday, January 27th, 2026, a yin metal ox day in a yin earth ox month in a yin wood snake year. The weekly hexagram in its changing line is number 3, sprouting, third line changing. Hunting deer without a guide, lost in the forest, not letting go brings harm. Compulsion, unbridled desire, and selfishness leads to calamity. Consulting the oracle without a wise interpreter bodes badly. Consulting the oracle when you are desperate leads to miscalculation and confusion. A seed sprouts and rots. If we took this hexagram from the changing line to its conclusion, we would get hexagram 63, which is already a cross. 63 is about the continuity of change and questions the notion that it is possible to be truly finished or complete. When we start out, the goal is to cross the river. When we get to the other side of the river, we realize that there is still more to do. The obvious end of efforts and the accomplishment of a goal are, more often than not, the beginning of what must be done next. Hexagram 63 is change, but like a dynasty, it is a series of reigns that create a continuity of leadership. This speaks to generational legacies and momentums of causal forces. The auspices of hexagram 63 are about recognizing that all things decline and that the disorder and chaos of decline is inevitable. Perhaps we should not hurry or press for completion. The goal we seek may bring more trouble than we can imagine, and yet the river rolls on and on. No end is an end of itself. Things merely change, transform. The world of red dust is thus. The daily hexagram for today is number 43, which is lurch. This indicates a divisional fork in the river, the moment that things naturally take a turn for the worse. Early warning signs inspire flight. A goat about to be sacrificed escapes. It is a last-ditch effort. Though the sacrifice does not proceed, that is still an omen. The goat lurches with all its strength to avoid the sacrificial knife blade. Knowing when to abandon plans is an important aspect of success, and the successful includes a timely cutting of losses and decisive departures. I'm reading from my draft, so I'm going to go back and edit this stuff a little bit more. But just so you know, this is going to be up on my Substack for those joining later. I'm recording a video of me reading it so that there can be a little more context and that there can be just more experimenting with creating content in the situation that we're in. So here's my commentary based on the Tong Shu's hexagrams for today, which are number 3, third line changing, and number 43. No changing lines. So this is my commentary. Sprouting and lurching. Don't break the baby with your cortisol addiction. So we are still in the final days of the yin wood snake year in the 12th moon, which is a yin earth ox moon. This month is traditionally the most difficult month of the year because it is the most stagnant, while also that stagnation is transforming slowly and diligently under the surface of the earth, which is damp, cold. It's an earth month in a water season, which is winter. Okay, it is the coldest month of the year as well, and there is so much going on politically and emotionally that we are overwhelmed. But we also do not have any extra energy from the environment to really do anything about it. We are looking forward to energy that is not here yet, and we are using our reserve energy, our ancestral energy, our storehouse energy to essentially prop up our aggressive actions to try to make progress when the world/nature is actually saying that this is not the time for that kind of progress. This year we will have two essential beginnings to the fire horse year. Spring begins, Chi node happens around February 4th, which is the beginning of spring, and the other beginning happens at the Lunar New Year proper, which is, I believe, the 14th or the 17th of February. And off the top of my head, I can't remember right now. Even so, the beginning of spring, the beginning of Lunar New Year, is always very tender. You have to think of it like a little tiny sprouting seedling that is actually very vulnerable. It's like a little baby, and it's not yet demonstrative of its power, but because it's going to be a fire horse year, very quickly it will try to run, and that will be this kind of endless summer quality, which may seem great in comparison to what we are dealing with now. However, this energy does not have an innate moral compass, so it is about using momentum to carry on and grow that momentum in a very hot, very fiery, very emotional way. So summertime is probably going to feel extremely exhausting and busy for a lot of people, and there's probably going to be a lot of burnout. Galloping for the sake of galloping, because expressing galloping feels like self-actualization and value. Okay? Remember that things tend to beget themselves. So extremism in any form promotes extremism in all forms. So be prepared for a lot of political, mental, and emotional appeal. Horses, after all, are extremely social creatures, and upheaval. And just a lot of people riding their emotions and desires even more exaggeratedly than we have ever seen in the last 60 years. It boggles my mind, to be honest. But back to the present moment. In this moment, it is completely normal to feel stagnant and almost desperate, lonely, sad, cold, or frozen, and to want to try to solve that from a colonial point of view. Unfortunately, this will lead to disaster. Keep in mind, there's a national general strike on this Friday, January 30th. This is actually pretty great for the ox moon. No school, no work, no shopping, etc. Be kind, stoic even. Clean your house or bake food. Organize, but don't spend money. So let's do a little bonus, since I'm here and I didn't realize that would take such a short amount of time to read. After all, this is an experiment, so bear with me. So when I use the tong shu, the first thing I do before I throw coins, which I didn't do today because it basically told me not to. So the first thing I do is I look at the actual day and see what's already there, because there's already 2 hexagrams every day that are just mathematically allocated. And that's what this is today. And so why I didn't throw coins for myself is because of this line, which is consulting the oracle when you are desperate leads to miscalculation and confusion. So I recognized I had some desperation around my health and just the state of things. And I realized, throwing coins about that in this state is not going to help. So I'm just going to analyze what's already here and not try to add new information in. And so that's what this is. This is transparently how I try to use the technology of these ancient Chinese systems, knowing that I'm still basically a beginner because I don't really have access to like all of the knowledge base. But I have access to some, so I'm trying to use it, right? So the main thing is to recognize where you're at in time always, right? Just recognize there's always a moon that you're in. There's always a day. There's a day that you're in inside of a month, and that's inside of a year. And that sort of dictates the general auspices of everything that you're dealing with. And of course, there's an hour too that you're in, which is a 2-hour time period. And that 2-hour time period does affect things, especially divination. So that's a sort of separate topic, but just recognize that you're going to feel different every 2 hours, and that's based on this nested sort of cycle that's happening, which is like the hour inside of a day, inside of a month, which is a moon, inside of a year. And then those are all changing through the seasons, and then you're sort of getting a climatological apprehension that's happening to your body, because that's how nature works. It's not really seeing the future. It's more like feeling the ground underneath your feet and actually the wind on your skin and going, oh, that's something is changing. And so we're trying to take the mysticism out of this, right? We're trying to not be so mystical about this stuff. So the hexagrams, the weekly hexagram cycles in a series of 6. So every 6 days there's a new weekly hexagram. And that weekly hexagram has an emphasis line, which is called the changing line, and that changes in every day for 6 days. It kind of goes up the chain of command. So today is the 3rd day of the 6-day cycle, right? And it's hexagram 3, which is a very early hexagram, which is about a sprouting little seedling in the ground. So that's essentially saying spring is coming, but it's like underneath the earth right now, trying to break through. It's not here yet. So it's like pre-spring. You would think that sprouting would be like springtime is happening, but actually we're talking about even before that. We're talking about what the ox energy is doing underneath the earth, because ox is an earth branch. It's a native earth branch animal, and that brings dampness to the cold, but that dampness then can heat up through diligent work, which is what the ox is. It's like slow, hard-working, diligent, consistent labor. And you got to think about like a yak or something in the frozen tundra just slowly existing, or like a bison in the middle of winter, just kind of slowly existing. And that's the labor that it's doing, is changing winter into spring. And so we're in that moon still for another few weeks, because the moon doesn't change until the middle of February, but we will get a feeling of springtime around February 4th, which is technically the beginning of spring, but it's not really the tiger moon yet. So we're going to have a spring ox moon this year, which is kind of fun, just because it's not really typical. But I think the thing that we have to understand is like, what is an ox as a creature? An ox is very strong, it's very tough, it's very stoic. It in some way is thick-skinned or thick-headed. It's not nimble, it's not dexterous, it's not fast. It's just a kind of, if you've ever been around an ox or a water buffalo, obviously they come in different sizes, a yak, a bison. It's like they're very strong and they're extremely powerful, but they're not necessarily super fast. I mean, obviously they might be faster than a human, but in terms of other animals, they're not like the most fast thing ever, right? But there's plenty of amazing videos of like, a group of lions or lionesses hunting a ox on the Serengeti or whatever, some kind of water buffalo, and actually they can get a few hits in, right? That the hide of the ox is very tough, so they can get a few hits in and the ox might not even recognize them right away. It's almost like they're in a kind of daze, they're kind of eating and they're just like in a trance, right? But if an ox gets in the right position and just does like one hit, it's like One Punch Man anime. It's like flinging lions around. It's just like they just make this little move, but for them it's just a regular move, and it has such strength and mass behind it. It's like being hit with a freight train, and so the lions run away because they can't even really gang up on these beings. They're trying to eat the babies, but the adult ox or bison or whatever are like way too strong. So this idea of the ox is sort of like diligent work in the dark, in the cold, in the stiffness, in the stillness. It's just this routine labor. Okay, it's like the daily grind, but to the ox, the daily grind is predictable and it's comforting. Okay, it's not like, oh no, I'm bored. Like, the ox doesn't really get bored. The ox really appreciates this kind of predictability. And so we're in this month of wanting predictability because we want the predictable outcome of winter becoming spring. So when the colonial capitalist world is doing all these things to basically act like it's summer forever, it actually throws us all off because we're being asked to go into highly mobile action in a time of winter where there's not really the chi available for that. So what happens when we're forced to go to war in winter, which is essentially what's happening? So what happens when we go to war in winter is we have to use a lot of resources, okay? So going to war in winter is extremely expensive for everybody involved. It's a little less expensive if you're on home field advantage. But even if you're on home field advantage, if you're being essentially forced to mobilize in the winter months where winter is trying to become spring in the ox moon, then you're still going to essentially take money from your ancestral bank out of deposit, right? You're going to use your jing, your marrow, your sort of sexual fluids. You're going to use all that stored energy for defending and for fighting and for survival, which is more depletion. Okay, so there's more depletion coming so that you're going to enter springtime in an extremely agitated and depleted state. So it's really tough to kind of recognize that, like, sometimes in order to do the right thing, you really set yourself up for a domino effect in the future, right? So what can people do during this time to mobilize, but to not mobilize in such a way that's going to lead to excessive burnout? Because the next year that's coming is going to be a fire horse year. And for very young people, it's like having a hard on 24/7. It's like taking your pill. It's like taking your little blue pill forever every day and feeling like you're invincible. And a very, very small percentage of the public who's very vocal and very loud and has a lot of energy, they're going to essentially take control of the narrative because the energy of the year coming up is like doing that for them. They're like feeling like they're on methamphetamines. For the rest of us who maybe have a little bit more wisdom, more injuries accrued, more disability, or just don't have the character to sort of want to do that kind of excessive everything, like running for the sake of running. Like, we're not interested in just like running as a hobby. You know what I mean? Like, there are people in the world that really do that, and then there are people that don't, and we don't need to all be the same kind of people. But because the fire horse year is like the most yang version of the 60-year cycle, I just want to be very careful that it's not compulsory and sort of like contagious to everyone's idea of like success, because you're going to be essentially outvoted by the loudness. You're going to be yelled out of existence next year, because all the people that have high testosterone and a lot of like privilege and a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of ability, they're going to basically be put up on the pedestal of the seasonal chi, and they're going to run. They're going to run. And running is like, there's no like moral morality to running, right? But it's more like, where's the momentum behind you going? Like, you could run to safety and sanctuary, or you could run off a cliff. It doesn't really matter to a horse at some level, because they just want to run and they want to do it together. So they're going to want to call people to them and run in a pack. Horses are social animals, and they really want that kind of social validation, because it's also social co-regulation. When a horse is alone, they tend to go to sort of like suicidality and like depressive mania states. And that's not good for the horse, but we also don't want to essentially make like, if by joining with them, they drag us off a cliff, that's not what we want either. So we're going to have to all be very careful of horse energy coming. That's coming soon, especially in the summer months. It's going to be, I don't even know how to describe the like level of extreme exaggeration of this, Because if you look back on even the last few years, it's already been an extremely young and fiery time, because that's what empire and colonialism do, is that they constantly ramp up this kind of like July heat all the time. And that leads to excessive cultural and personal diseases, which I've talked about on my Substack before. So just understand that, like, in the preparation for springtime, which is this fire horse energy, there's going to be a lot of delusion, because the chi in the environment is going to be so yang and so fiery that it's going to feel like a cure to a lot of people. It's going to feel like they've just been given the elixir of the gods. And that's not true. It's just how time moves. And so the horses can be very happy, and they could still trample and stampede over you and crush your head like a watermelon. Right? Like, I'm not trying to say that they're evil, that they shouldn't. It's like being in charge of a classroom full of young boys. It's very actually like you really have to have your head on a swivel, because they have so much energy that they think certain things are just normal to do, like climb out a window, just get into a fight. Why? Because they're so interested in enacting this yang potential that they have. And if that yang potential feels stifled in any way, they kind of go crazy. So it's a perception issue, number one, is to recognize that, like, just because you can't run around all day doesn't mean we don't hate you. But to the mind of a horse that's been colonized, the delusions are just ghostly and demonic. And this can lead to things like more mass shootings, more incel behavior, more political upheaval, more war, more riots, more everything, because the kind of people who want to feel like this energy is making them like Conan the Barbarian, like to feel so good in their body, yeah. And the heart is like the organ of this power of the fire, that you can see how this could lead to things like strokes and heart attacks on one level, burnout and exhaustion on another level, if they don't have the kidney chi to sustain it, right? So I'm just sort of getting you ready for that kind of year of, like, if you think you're already overwhelmed, you probably have no clue yet. Like, there might be a real need in the future, like in the next 6 months, to delete all social media, just because you won't be able to handle the yang chi pouring out of the screen. Okay? And it's not about being weak or overly sensitive. It's just about, like, when extremism flares like this, you have to take certain actions to protect yourself. Right? Like back in the 80s and 90s, when the ozone layer was extremely brittle and being destroyed by our actions, people really were like, get out of the sun at certain times of day, at certain times and places. And they're still like that in 2026. But just imagine that in every aspect of your life. That you might not be able to go shopping on a certain day at a certain time because the energy is so intense. That the aggression and the like vigor of the horse, that going shopping might lead to an accident on the street because people are not paying attention to the stop signs or the red lights. Right? Like, you put yourself in the path of a stampede. So imagine that the entire year, from February to February. Right? So self-defense is not necessarily getting into a fight with people. It's having the foresight to avoid the fight altogether. And to be very clear that, like, you cannot, like, fight a raging bull or something. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't fight a mob. Like, fighting a mob is just a loser's battle. There's no way. Even if you were a trained black belt, you'd barely be able to get out of a mob fight alive, because it's just too many. There's too much going on. So this idea of, like, a stampede, heart attacks, strokes, extremely high emotional reactivity, that's next year. which is coming in a few weeks, right? So I just want you to sort of be a little prepared for what the Asian systems are sort of saying. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm not trying to, obviously some people are going to become multimillionaires and they're going to be like, this is the best year of my life. I'm not saying that that's not good. I mean, everybody's time in the sun comes around, right? Everybody needs a win now and then. But for a vast majority of people, it's going to mean death, exhaustion, imprisonment, injury, and that's tough to sort of recognize. But if we could all, get our vitamin D from the year, essentially, be warm, be warm and have light and feel good and be social in a horse way, which is not always about aggressive athleticism and building things and optimizing, but actually be more like an elderly horse or something someone who can appreciate that but doesn't have to sort of partake in it all the time. Like instead of joining ultimate frisbee, you can just play regular frisbee. You know what I'm saying? It's you don't have to do the thing that's going to tear your ACL because everyone else is you can do it, and you actually feel like you could do it because the chi of the year is just so intense. And you're going to feel like a great victory in thinking you can. Just because the time right now is so dense and so solid and so frozen and so cold and so hard that it's just going to feel like a miracle happened to you. Like you suddenly are taking steroids or something. And so I just want you to sort of enjoy that feeling without necessarily acting on it because of the reality check that we need to make for our own karma. And for some of you, you're not going to listen to any of this, and that's fine, because if that's your destiny, go forth and prosper. I don't really care. I'm more saying this to people who are vulnerable to the extreme polarization and aggression that is going on in the world, where you don't necessarily have the energy to recover if really terrible things happen to you. And so you have to play it very safe. Whereas a lot of people who are young and feel invincible, they're not going to play it safe. And that's going to really affect the rest of us. And so we're going to have a real double eye vision kind of vibe, like one eye in each world, to understand that most of the people with all the energy are not necessarily going to want to listen to elders in any way. They're not going to want to listen to yin, the grandmother energy that tells them, hey, you're going to waste a lot of energy if you do that work right now. They're going to want to go, no, it has to get done now. Okay? So I just want you to sort of understand that the energy of the year that's coming it might feel very good, but it also might trample the fuck out of you. Okay? So that's a little forecasting, but coming back to today and what we're still doing is that the ox energy is transforming winter to spring under the ground, diligently, slowly. And it's happening, but it's a little bit like if our emotions get too out of whack or too early, we will injure the baby. Because the baby is quite fragile right now, right? It's like an embryological thing. It's like the baby is tough and strong and resilient and flexible, but it's also vulnerable and fragile. And so we have to understand that aggressive heat and at this time is really just wasting our own energy because we don't actually have it extra from the environment. So all that heat that we're trying to generate in fighting oppression, that's coming from our kidneys. That's not coming from the environment because the environment's not giving that to us. That's coming from our ancestral reserves. And so some people have it to use. Some people have it to use, some people have it to waste, and some people don't have it to use or waste. And so if you're one of those people who feel like you have a very little amount of energy to use, then you're going to have to find a way to listen to wisdom and still be a part of community, while also recognizing that a whole lot of community is not going to want to listen to you, because they're going to think that the way you're resisting is not useful. They want able bodies with energy to burn it. Whereas I'm just looking at my life, it's like that's a really stupid thing to do for a lot of people. Even if you feel like you have it to burn, maybe you shouldn't burn it. Like, maybe you should save it for when it's more available in the environment, and then you don't have to use as much to do the thing. Like, maybe in 2 or 3 months you can go protest, because there'll be more chi in the air, and you'll feel like, oh, right, I'm not wasting as much as my chi to do this. I'm actually able to do this because I'm being buoyed by the environment. But right now, the environment is not doing that for us. So we're having to rely on our community body, our group bodies. And then, of course, each person in the group body is relying on the ancestral chi that they have in their marrow, right? So it's tough to sort of reckon that, like, the wisdom of the ancients is sort of telling us to defend and retreat. And like an ox's body is like its own defense. But if they were constantly putting themselves in danger, that would be stupid. So in some way, we have to be like a smart ox, which is like, be stoic, be thick-skinned, don't expend a lot of energy, pay attention, move slowly, move consistently, be practical, be repetitive, do the things that you know are healthy for you, get to bed on time, all that sort of like regular chi management stuff, just like eat a healthy breakfast, don't overeat dinner, don't eat too late before going to bed. All that stuff is like very consistent, right? It's like be consistent, which also helps the kidneys. It helps the water element to be consistent, right? And so I'm going to wrap this up in a minute here. Take a drink of tea. But these kinds of auspices are not changing that much for the next 2 weeks. So I know I'm just repeating myself. But the point is that, like, we're all very, like, all creatures want to move towards the light, move towards the sun, at least mammalian creatures, right? Like, we want to grow. But there is such a thing as too much fertilizer too soon. Wanting something to grow faster than its natural rate. Wanting something to appear mature before it has gone through the annoying process of maturation, right? We all want to be smarter than we already are. We all want to be tougher and sexier than we already are. But it's like, yeah, but then you have to like eat right every day and go to the gym like 3-4 times a week consistently. Like, it's the consistent part that is the thing, right? And a lot of us go, yeah, but I don't want the consistent part. I want the silver bullet. I want the thing that's going to get me to feel good now. And I'm not saying that's not available. It's just available in the consistency. It's available in getting a good night's sleep, right? It's available in going, I'm fucking exhausted. I need to stop this now, and maybe I'll pick it up tomorrow again. Like, in neurology, there's this window of function, which is called 90-minute window. And in the 90-minute window, if you have no distractions, you can really, really function at a high level for 90 minutes, as long as you take 10-second no stimulus breaks within that 90-minute window. But then after that 90-minute window, you have to have a timer that goes off, and then you have to take at least a 20-minute no stimulus break. Okay? And in that 20-minute no stimulus break, you're essentially just doing non-conceptual meditation, which is like feeling your breath, looking at the clouds. It's not like you're not inputting any more stimulus. You're not thinking about what you just did for 90 minutes. And at maximum, and this is extremely ableist, at maximum, a person could do 2 of those a day. Okay? And the rest of the time is kind of like your management busy work, right? It's not really your most creative, most most growth-oriented labor that you can do in a day possibly only happens one time for most people. One 90-minute chunk, as long as you have a good night's sleep, proper nutrition, and take the 10-second and 20-minute breaks, right? Like all of that must be in the same ecosystem of relationality in order for the consistent growth to happen. But if we look at it like reasonable, like adults living under oppressive capitalism, then maybe only 2 90-minute sessions an entire week is possible, where your brain actually functions on a level where you're actually able to concentrate, get into a flow state, and actually learn the thing you're trying to learn, rather than be distracted by all of the fears and pressures that are everywhere else. So I'm not really giving you like silver bullets. I'm mostly saying that, like, for a lot of us, the stress that we're under is even damaging those 2 90 minutes a week windows. And so we may not even have any of those 90-minute a week windows. And at that point, we have to have another strategy, which is essentially all those breaks, the 10-second and the 20-minute, those have to become actually the practice itself, the consistency of going into a non-conceptual, non-stimulus, non-consumptive state, where you're not thinking, you're not analyzing, you're not trying to remember, you're not trying to solve, you're not trying to do any of that stuff. But you're actually just existing and breathing and like feeling that, and like not trying to create some grand conclusion around that, right? And I think that's a sort of a longer conversation that maybe I can have in a few weeks, but the protocols by which a body doesn't constantly go into burnout or like a kind of extreme position actually is antithetical to what we're being demanded of under not only capitalism, but revolution against capitalism. Because revolution against capitalism is mostly also asking us to be just like a capitalist, except against it. Right? It's like, fight. You got to keep fighting. Whereas, a biological system doesn't really make the narrative distinction. It's just doing what the state has sort of prescribed itself to be. It's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're constantly fighting, then your system is geared to produce extra cortisol and stuff like that. And at a certain point, that runs its course. It's not, like I said in a previous video, it's like this constant need to desire and to fulfill desire and to optimize is not a fuel source which can withstand tyranny. It's not. It just isn't, because that is what tyranny is. Like this constant need to produce value for some kind of landlord or something, some kind of like power figure. And if that power figure is just your new besties in the revolution, well, you've just traded one tyrannical form of relationality for another. So we have to really pause, I think, and take the time in this ox moon to recognize that we still have 2 more weeks of winter. at least 2 more weeks of a real reflection time. And jumping into action so quickly because we want it to be spring, because we think in the spring, like we have all these reasons why we think we're doing the right thing. And so do I. But when I actually try to use the wisdom tradition, that is, thousands of years old, and the people who used it were much poorer than me in a material way, it really kind of checks the hubris of the situation. That like it really doesn't matter what you want as much as the other cofactors in the environment and the community are there, then maybe you could get what you wanted. But if those factors aren't there, then all you do is put yourself in a grave danger. And no one's going to save you from that. Because if everyone's doing that, we can't even help each other because we're so karmically bound by our preferences and our need to optimize and succeed that by the time we wouldn't even recognize success at that in that state of mind. Like we wouldn't even recognize what success would be if it bit us in the face, because we would be so exhausted and so aggressed and so like injured by our own previous actions that it's like going on vacation and getting sick. And the reason your body does that is because you haven't let it process. And then you go on vacation and everything tries to process at once. And you get sick because your immune system goes, boop. So I think that's the big cultural issue we're dealing with right now. COVID is still a pandemic. Like we can't wish our way out of this situation. And the situation doesn't come from merely opposing the oppressive forces that we don't want, because that is the game. The game is to have an enemy forever and to always need to fight it. And that's what a nation state economic mythology is built on. Is that those people over there want to take what we have. Those people over there want to take what we own. And maybe they do, but they're thinking the same thing. Those people over there have taken what we need. So this is the endless war cycle we're in since, Mesopotamian times, essentially, with like nomads versus agriculturalists or something, like it's a very old story and it doesn't change. It just each tribe has its own mythology around why they're the victim. And we see what Israel has done with their victim story. And we see what the United States has done with its victim story. And there's plenty of other intra-cultural oppression that happens in the same way all around the world, because even in the same region, there's people who are like, well, but we're not like them. So I'm going to end it for today and try to post this, but thanks for listening. I don't know if this experiment was useful, but it was something. And I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Thanks so much. Check my Substack out. This all goes on Substack. That's where my whole thing lives. So if you're like, oh, I missed something, it's like, no, you really didn't, because I archive it. All right. Talk to you later.